Hello, welcome to AntKast by Ant Group. I'm your host, R.T. Warfield, coming to you from London. In the past few episodes, we've invited thinkers to share big picture views and insights on technology and the economy. Today, we want to shift our focus a little and share some stories of small businesses. According to the World Bank, small and mid-sized enterprises account for the majority of businesses worldwide and are important contributors to job creation and global economic development. They represent about 90% of businesses and more than 50% of employment worldwide. Today, our guest is Oklahoma, USA native Matt Balcerak. He's the owner of Comic Book Ren, a comic book store located in Chengdu, China. We'll be talking about his story of running an SME, how COVID has impacted his business, and what it is like to create a business around a hobby. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great. Now, before we get started, because I was really curious about this, tell me how an Oklahoma boy ends up in Chengdu, China, running a business.
I was lucky when I was in university. I had the opportunity to study abroad for a semester and study Chinese at Sichuan University, located here in Chengdu. And I met a lot of good people, had a really good experience, and decided that if I could, I would do my best to live and work in the city. And after returning to the United States and finishing my education, I spent a few years there working, saved up some money, and then moved here to start a new life.
What made you decide to open a comic book shop of all kinds of businesses you could do?
A whole lot of my friends here, of course, are also a little nerdy, love comic books. Shortly after we moved here, there was the huge boom in interest because of all of the Marvel and DC movies that kept coming out at the theaters. So there was a lot of people that kept asking me, where do I get my comic books? What's going on? And of course, I kept collecting, but it was a little tricky to get stuff here, and you have to ship a whole lot of books at the same time. Well, the shipping is just prohibitive. So I got together with some of my friends, and I was wanting to open up a business and do something to, make Chengdu feel even more like home. And we got the idea to open the comic book store to make the hobby just more accessible to not only me, but all of my friends and all of our friends' friends that also love comic books.
Okay, so tell me about your interest in comics. When did it start, and how has it impacted your life?
When I was young, my mom would always take me to the flea market, and it's just fantastic. My family was really small. I have a younger sister and my dad, and my sister and my dad thought the flea market was the most boring place in the world. So that was just something my mom and I would do together, and you get to go around and just dig through so much stuff, like old toys, old comics. There's always clothes, and then the farm equipment, stuff that I would never look at and that I couldn't really describe. But when I was young, I'd always zero in on the comic books and the toys, and they would just be, the colors and the stories were so bright. My mom would give me some pocket money so I could pick up some and take them home, and I'd read them, and I'd reread them, and I'd go back, and I'd try to find more issues that were from the same number. So from the beginning, when I first started reading, I didn't really go to a comic shop every week to get the new issues. I was digging through all of these boxes of comics, trying to find the next number. It's like, ooh, Fantastic Four from 1972. Well, how am I going to find the next month? And you'd get lucky a month or a year later, and it developed this passion for digging. I love digging. I love flea markets. I love junking. It's just, it's incredibly fun. If you've never done, you should go. So you obviously sound very enthusiastic and passionate about comics. Do you have a favorite comic, and maybe do you have a favorite superhero? When I was young, my favorite superhero team was the Fantastic Four. I absolutely loved those guys, and they got me into science fiction as a larger genre, and from a young age got me thinking about those types of scientific questions that, no 6-year-old should be contemplating. But when they're having action and adventure about it, you're like, what is this? And you learn a lot of words. But as I got older, I got into Batman, and then, to be completely honest, I'm a huge Star Wars fanboy, and I read them all, and that is where I collect right now.
I see. So, as you're saying, you're obviously very passionate. It's a hobby for you. So how is it like to establish a business based on a hobby? I would imagine, it's not probably what people would think. Like, I'm just going to do my hobby every day. I'm going to make money from it. And I'm sure it wasn't necessarily that, right? So can you tell me a little bit about the process?
Oh, there's definitely a learning curve. If anyone is thinking about ever opening a comic book store, the first place you should stop is Mile High Comics. Look that up on the internet. He has a blog section on his website that outlines his entire life and how he opened his store, and helped me personally avoid what could have been a million pitfalls. So
is he still in business? He still in business?
He is still in business, and his life story
is this in Denver?
Yeah.
In Denver, Colorado?
You got it.
Okay.
But yeah, so I read all of that and reread it, and at the beginning that was like my comic book store Bible. And from that, I started to think about what would be more unique to China, which is the logistics and actually getting the books here. And after sitting down and discussing it with my friends, I opened it up with Ashley, and we got together and started the process of getting it all here.
What do you think about the concept of comic books as an asset class? Because you say you collect them. So is this a good place to invest your money?
For me personally, I believe that for any hobby that you want to treat as an investment, it should not be an investment first. Like, if you have a hobby, you need to enjoy it, and that joy doesn't really have a value. But one of the cool things about comic books is they do appreciate over time. So one of the fun parts that many people enjoy about comics is the process of collecting or organizing or putting them into the right types of bags and boards so they'll last in the same condition forever. And for people that do wish to invest in comics, the best place to begin is any of the first appearances of big or medium characters. When Harley Quinn, for example, first debuted in Batman the Animated Series in, I think, 1992 or 1993, she was just on the cartoon. But that cartoon had an accompanying comic book that had Harley Quinn's first appearance, and that was a very common comic book, an easy comic book to get at that time. But the people that were aware of first appearances, and now the universal love for Harley Quinn has skyrocketed the value of that comic book to almost $1,000 United States. So almost 6,000 or a little over 6,000 renminbi.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So tell me about your business. What are the kind of customers you have, the demographics of them?
The blessing of being a comic book store is it's in its nature, it's a destination location. So we are lucky because Chengdu is a very awesome city to live in, but we could set up almost anywhere in the city, and people that are in the hobby would try to find us, which is good because our store is very difficult to find. Chengdu has a very relaxed atmosphere. It's known as the more relaxed of the major cities in China, and it's got a big culture of playing games like mahjong and reading books. There's a lot of different bookstores here, and we are now one of those as a comic book store, and it's cool to be in a city that really has a relaxed and laid-back culture for people that will actually sit down and pick up a book and not just read the comic book, but like appreciate it and look at the art and watch the story. And it's just a great feeling having a comic book store in the city, the best city in China for a comic book store.
When I think about your average comic book reader, I tend to think of a younger male person reading comic books or being interested in them, and I'm guessing that probably is not true. Can you tell me a little bit about your customers that come in?
Oh yeah, that is not true at all. The first misconception is male. By and far, most of the people that come to the store are girls. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's absolutely crazy to me. When I lived in the United States, whenever I went to a comic book store, a girl walked in, everyone would be like, "Whoa, that's crazy." But this was, of course, before any of the comic book movies came out. Now everywhere, everybody is going. But unique to our store, we get a lot more girls than we do guys. And as far as other types of customers, we get, it's definitely not super young. Since English skill is a little bit important for comic books, our youngest customers and the youngest people that come to the store are usually teenagers. But usually it's more likely college-age students or young professionals that come to the store the most. Those guys get really passionate about their favorite comic book heroes, and there's a group of young professionals in Chengdu that actually come up to the store pretty frequently. One of them, his name's Chris, is always cosplaying as Spider-Man. It is fantastic. If you've seen a picture of a Spider-Man around Chengdu, it's probably him. We get, but I'd probably say the coolest ones and maybe the most interesting people that come to the store are when we get an entire family, and we'll get like some older Chinese couples that, or maybe some young professional Chinese couples that just have a baby. So we've got these little 6-month to 1-year-old babies, cutest thing in the world, in little Batman t-shirts. Like they're showing them the books and all the little toys, and it's so cute. So it's really, you may imagine the people that come to the stores, like all one group of, like social outcasts. And it did kind of feel that way when I was young, but now it's completely different. It's a place where almost anybody can come in. There's one guy that comes in all the time, and he doesn't speak any English at all, but he absolutely loves the artist Jim Lee. And he comes in, and like whenever we get something special that's Jim Lee, I'll hold it in the back for the next time he comes, and like we'll be like, "Oh, this one's great," or "I've already got this one," and like it's really cool. Like the guy's an artist, just loves Jim Lee, and that is his reason to come, and it's interesting. So we get all different types of people that come to the store.
I mean, obviously, you're very popular and successful. So what do you think is the key to your success?
I think what makes our store unique is we've tried to be as authentic as possible. When you walk in the door, it feels like you've walked into a comic book store in, any country where you just have that atmosphere of everything is incredibly nerdy, and you immediately feel like you're like at home there. And that authenticity is something that I've wanted and tried to keep from the beginning, and it's really made the atmosphere something special. And I think it's been great. It's just a interesting feeling when you walk up the staircase and you open the door, and then suddenly it's just boom. It's like you're in a different world.
Well, I'm coming to Chengdu. I'm definitely visiting. You used the word authenticity. So do you think that is like the key to success for a lot of SMEs, is to be authentic?
I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. For me, I collect records and I collect comic books. And the nature of both of those hobbies is what I look for has to be authentic, because it's something you hold and you touch. For a lot of people that read comic books, they'll download them off the internet. There's many subscription services through Marvel and DC where you can get books. And there's even a lot of Chinese fan services that translate the new comic books, and you can download those off of the Chinese comic sites, right? So there are fans that don't have a value to holding or owning or reading an actual physical book. And but for us, since we are what we are, we're a comic book store that specializes in actual comic books, those aren't the people that come desire that authentic thing because they are in the part of the hobby that wants to hold it and wants to touch it. They're a little bit different than the other half of us that, just go to all the movies and read the comic books on the internet. You have to, if you want to succeed, you've got to know what you are, and you have to be what you are the best you can. And the people that value what you are will find you.
Can you maybe explain to us what you think the importance of in having a brick and mortar, that you're not just online, having a brick and mortar with this kind of niche business?
Yeah. Earlier we talked a little bit about authenticity, and that is also important with having the brick and mortar. Because anybody can go online and get anything nowadays, but it's unique and it's special when you go to a store or a brick and mortar location that caters to that particular idea or product or niche. Like when you think about other popular items that tons of people collect or love, like it's very easy to find a toy store. It's pretty easy to find something that specializes in Japanese comic books or gunpla or models or painting, but it's difficult to find something for comic books. And if you're in a hobby, some of the part of that fun is going to the location, and it feels very validating to live in a place where, like if you love reading manga, Japanese comic books, any city is going to have half a dozen, at least, stores dedicated to that. And how great is it to go out with your friends one day and it's like, oh, we all love this hobby. Let's go to all the stores. We'll make a day of it. It'll be fun. And that is something that you just don't get if everything is online. And it is, I don't know, I think it's a uniquely validating experience to be in a place that values your hobby and has many places you can go. I was recently in Beijing. I collect vinyl records, and I was able to go to half a dozen vinyl record stores in a day. It was great. It feels really cool. And I hope that someday in the future there'll be enough comic book stores dotting China that someone doesn't have to travel halfway across the country to visit one, but they're still welcome to come because ours will always be special. But I hope that in the future when people come to our store, they are comparing it to the store in their hometown. That would be would be ideal.
It sounds to me. It sounds to me from the way you're talking that you get as much out of it as your comic book fan customers do. Am I wrong?
Nobody opens a hobby store unless they love the hobby. Otherwise, you would just be crazy.
So so it's like the interaction with them, and like you're talking about these like babies dressed as Batman and whatnot, this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I learned more about comic books the first 2 years I had a comic book store than I had in my entire life, just from other fans coming in and being like, I really love this guy. I'm going to tell you about this guy. You should read this. And then I read it, and it's really good. And then I'm telling other people about it, and they're telling me what their favorite thing is. And they all get so excited and so passionate, and you can't not become infected. And since I already love reading comics, I read a lot of the stuff people suggest. And those first 2 years, I learned so much just from the people that dropped by. It's crazy. I still learn so much from people that drop by.
Yeah, you mentioned something there I just want to quickly ask you about, and that is, you said you had to apply for some loans. What kind of a process in China is that to get a small business loan?
There is an entire program run through Alipay for that if you run a small business, that you can apply for small loans. And as you build up your credit through that Alipay system, the amount of the loan that you can get grows. And since we had been using this Alipay system since we opened the store, we were very blessed that when COVID came out, we had a very large loan that we qualified to take. So that really saved our butt.
So having operated this business for, was it like 6 years? How long have you been running this business? 6 years? So what is the value in having a brick and mortar physical retail? Because a lot of people are moving online shopping. It's just, it's just growing exponentially, online shopping in the world. So what do you think the value in having a brick and mortar store in this online shopping world?
That is a tricky question. So I'm just going to tell you straight from my heart. When I made the store, I knew I was going to live in Chengdu forever, and I want a place I can retire and work and be happy for the rest of my life. And it's true. More and more stuff is moving online. It's more convenient. It's easier to find. But at the end of the day, as soon as everything moves online, there's only going to be one person left, and that'll be me. So I'm stubborn, but I do not want to live in a city that doesn't have a comic book store. So I open a comic book store. And as long as it is within my power to keep it open, I will keep it open because it is a place that people have wanted to come to. And as long as people keep wanting to come, I will keep being here.
Well, I don't think you have much to worry about, honestly, because we recently had a retail analyst on, and she told me that, although we're hearing doom and gloom all the time in the media, in fact, actually, a lot of retail establishments, brick and mortar, are closing, but there's just as many new ones opening. And it's going to be a kind of a hybrid between the two. So I don't think you have anything to worry about.
It's true. I think shopping is fun. Shopping online is a lot of fun, and it does. But everyone has phones; it's very easy. But actually going out and going to stores and seeing things and holding it in your hand—that's an experience. And people don't do it as often. But when they do it, I think people go to shop. It's no longer something you have to do. So when you do it, you enjoy it.
Yeah, I understand. I totally agree. So before we wrap things up, I just like for people listening and say, "Oh, I have a hobby, and I want to open my own business, maybe from that." And you mentioned one thing, find somebody, like kind of a mentor, online mentor, somebody you look up to, like you mentioned the gentleman in Denver, Colorado, who had a blog about running his own comic book shop. So do you have any other kind of advice for anybody that's thinking right now? Maybe they want to open their own small business.
My advice is, if you're truly passionate about your hobby and you think the business can work, the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, how long do you not want to eat? If you love eating good food and you don't want to give that up, then opening a hobby business is probably not for you. Really, opening any business is just a question of what you are willing to give up as long as you have to be successful. And sometimes you're just not successful. There comes a point where it's a sunk cost and you've got to give up. I hope that doesn't happen to anyone who's truly passionate about what they're trying to do. But there's a trade-off there. And opening up any business is a big risk. So you've got to make that decision before you begin. How much am I willing to lose? How much am I willing to give up? How much sleep am I willing to lose? And if you can answer all those questions and be like, it's worth it. This needs to be done. I want this in my city. I need to have this. This will make everything better. If all of that is how you feel, then jump in and give up all those other things, and things will work out. You're going to learn a lot of hard lessons on the way, because there's always some new hoop to jump through that you never knew existed until it became a problem. But that's the other part of owning a small business. Everyone's like, what's your story? What are all these things? Like, owning a small business is just running from one fire to another to put them out. And then looking over your very warm business and being proud that nothing burned down. And going home, like at the end of the year, whenever we have an anniversary, I smile to myself, like, so that's one more year, we made it. That's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, your love and passion about the topic is infectious. I just love talking to you, and I promise you, when I come to Chengdu, you're going to be the first stop for me.
Ah, that's great. It'd be nice to meet you in person.
That was Matt Balcerak. He's the owner of Comic Book Ren. It's a comic book store located in Chengdu, China. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Take care.
While they may be small in size, businesses like Comic Book Ren are a crucial and dynamic part of the economy. They also offer people of all ages new and unique ways to pursue their dreams. On AntKast, we will continue to bring more stories about people involved in SMEs from around the world and learn how they've overcome obstacles to build successful enterprises. That's it for this episode of AntKast. To make sure not to miss a single episode, please subscribe on iTunes or Spotify. I'm R.T. Warfield, coming to you from London. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.